Well, good morning and hello everyone. Welcome to the first lesson of today. We are Rika and Yanis from the Public Climate School team, and we are also very happy to have Joice Mendez with us. She was born in Colombia and lived in different places in South America, which she will explain about. And we are very excited to have her tell us about her experiences in climate action, in energy transition in the region, and everything she's been working on. So it will be a very, very interesting session where you get to learn a bit about how sustainability works in different parts of the world, not just what you know about sustainability in Germany. And yes, we're just very happy to also listen to Joice ourselves.
Yes, but before we begin, we also want to include you and your opinions and your questions into our lesson. And we would ask you to join our Mentimeter channel. So you should see a Mentimeter QR code right now, or you can use the code to join our Mentimeter room. And we will be asking you some questions in the course of our lesson. And yeah, we will be happy to also get your comments and questions. But now, most important of all, we would like to introduce our guest, Joice Mendez. Would you like to say a few sentences about yourself before we begin diving into the topic?
Yeah, I will greet you in Guarani Ba'ei Cherera Joyce. So I'm greeting you in the beautiful language of Guarani, which is like an official language of the Amazonian region in Latin America. Very excited to be here. Really excited to share a good practice and to motivate you a little bit on a project that is been going on for almost 5 years. So a little bit about myself. I used to serve as one of the youth advisors on climate for the Secretary General of the UN. And I've been working especially on water, energy, and food security in transboundary regions in Latin America for over 15 years. So don't calculate my age. I started really young as well. And I want to give you a little bit of hints and, talk a little bit and build a little bit about the context of climate justice, which has been to the COP. So I got a lot that I want to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the short introduction. And to first get you all in the mindset of the session, we prepared a Menti question. So the question is, what images come to your mind when you think about the Amazon rainforest and life there? So we would like to ask all of you to just type words, expressions, really whatever you can think of. And we're very excited to receive your input. And as we were coming up with this question, we were also talking about how it's an interesting question for us as well. Like Yanis and I also have never been to the Amazonas, to Latin America in general. So we're also quite curious, especially because, you know, we get all these images from the European or the German media that depicts things in a specific way. And so it's quite interesting. Um, so Joyce, we have a few words already coming in. I will give you a few, read them out loud, and you can let us know if you think that's accurate, if it's something you've heard often, if it's a misconception. So we have wooden trees. We have, for example, fire, unfortunately. We have words like rain, rainy, humid. Um, we have deforestation and soy production and monkeys. This will be the first round. So how do you find the collection so far?
I mean, it is so interesting because I think we have this view, and I like to start like that so we can start setting the stage. Yeah, there is monkeys. There is a lot, like humid weather. There is an amazing forest, and unfortunately, I think that's the other side. We got to know a lot, and I know that in Germany and in Europe there was a lot at time that it was sharing the newspapers and the news about the fires. So that is
Mhm.
unfortunately quite all right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's been a quite a big topic recently.
Well,
Um,
at least it gets shared as well of all things that
mhm,
are really happening. But yeah, it is interesting to see kind of the perspective that you guys have.
mhm. Yeah, and in the meantime, there's a few more. We had also warm animals and Columbus, interestingly. Um, do you have something you can associate these with?
Yeah, I was just thinking, when we see, I don't know if you guys know, but the Amazon rainforest, it has been found out that it's not necessarily like a natural forest. It is actually, there is a lot of research that 12,000 years ago, the West Amazon pretty much was a human effort. It was planted.
Mhm,
So it's like kind of one of the biggest planetary efforts because the Amazon, and you learn this, it modifies, like the global weather, especially in terms of the precipitation and the water cycle, right? So if we think that 10,000 and 12,000 years ago, humans were gathering, and this was a multi-generational effort. So they were
mm,
already planning and planting, right? So they had this kind of association of plants that were giving shade so others can grow. So this is very smart, and we managed to modify the planet for good. Then we can do it still nowadays. If we still
Yeah.
have, climate change, and it's always pointed out humans that we cause it, but we can also accomplish amazing things. So try to check a little bit about it. And there were huge civilizations in the Amazon in the past. There
Mhm.
were settlements as well. So it's not just this forest that someone has to discover or that was discovered. So actually, Columbus not necessarily discovered the Americas. They were there and they were thriving.
Yes, I think that's definitely something important to keep in mind and also interesting to know because it's not necessarily the perspective of how we learn about it around here. So thank you very much for sharing that small story. And yes,
Yeah.
um,
And thank you very much to all of you for giving us this input, your ideas about life in the Amazon. And of course, we will understand better in the course of the coming 30 or 40 minutes how life in the Amazon really is like, and especially how the fight against climate change in the Amazon is like. And yeah, with that, I would like to hand over to Joyce's input now. But before that, wanted to tell you that we will have open a Q&A session in like after Joyce's input. You will have the chance to ask your questions. But you can already right now start typing in your questions via the Menti room. So leave open your Menti room and type in any questions that come to your mind while we are listening to Joyce's story and Joyce's presentation. So now over to you, Joyce.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good one, guys. Like if you have just questions, do not wait. Just put it on the chat. It's going to be a brief, right, presentation. But I want you to, oh, sorry, I want you to just bear in mind that also like we are here to discuss and to share experiences, right? Anyway, so I'm going to put my stopwatch so I can calculate the time and I don't speak as much. I just want to start a little bit at introducing this initiative in this amazing organization that has made possible, this communication. So Climate Stories, they connect young people from around the world, and you can see it in the map, to German schools and to German people as well and youth. So we can do this. We can share experience. We can share stories about climate, because climate is not something far away, it's not something untangible, but it's also people behind it. So it is more about showing the human side of, of not just the climate activists, but the climate projects, the challenges, but also what communities are doing kind of around the world. And basically the initiative, it is being said in kind of in a strategy of workshops. So they manage also to organize kind of in 3 spaces. And first of all, they have kind of a workshop to prepare the students and to ask them to get some information, to get some background information so they can start building, perspectives of climate justice. And then the second encounter is actually kind of with a story like the one I'm going to introduce to you, right? So you can understand a little bit of, like the good practices. And there is an additional one, a third one, where they explore kind of a specific topics, right? As you're seeing here, in terms of energy, mobility, nutrition, and consumption. So those are kind of in general, a little bit of how they work. Let me share it. Oh, and I would like you to take a look, and if you can scan the QR code here, so you can know a little bit about climate stories and maybe how to bring us to your, organization if you want to get involved as well. So, welcome. This is a little bit about climate stories. Let me take a look. All right, so let's get started here. So guys, we're gonna introduce a story where pretty much you have people from all around Latin America having a direct action in a community in the Peruvian Amazon. So I just put kind of my picture here because I was born in Colombia. Colombia has a huge part of the Amazon, but also the Amazon is a Latin American, is a regional area. And the picture that you see on the left, it is a little bit of the beginnings of this project. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's about solar energy, communication, energy transition. And this is kind of the beginning. So I want you to capture this picture because it looks simple. It looks like, oh, it looks very amateur, but it's not really amateur when you think what it means to have energy access in a place that you cannot just turn off and turn off the lights. So where this actually story begins, right? So let me show you a little bit of Foz de Iguazu. So if you see the part, the uppermost, you have the Amazon, which is, this very green area shared by several countries. But I'm going to introduce you also the triple border, right? And the triple border is where like youth from several countries, they gather in order to make this project happen. So I know it's different. Oh, sorry. I know it's different places. So I want you to keep in mind all these geographical areas. So this is it. This is where I grew up, and this is where my team is from. It is a triple border of these three countries, and we are in the Brazilian side. And I don't know if you have heard about this, but it is an amazing area where we have the Iguazu Falls, which they are shared among Argentina and among Brazil. I hope you one day can visit because it's truly amazing and a stunning place. And like we have for, like firsthand, we understand what climate crisis is, what water crisis is, because it doesn't look like that a full year. But anyway, this place is where we met all this amazing team. This team, as you can see the different flags, is we managed to gather youth from several countries of Latin America to do this project, right? We met in the city because it is very international. It has a lot of migrants. It has an international university. So a lot of youth from Latin America, they go to this place to get opportunities, right? So I want to ask you to have a little bit of imagination and help me in this point. So do you remember during pandemics, many people, they did quarantine, they went back to their country. So this is the case of Rosanna. Let me go back and show you who is Rosanna. Rosanna is a Peruvian indigenous climate leader, and she was studying in Brazil. So during pandemics, she returned back home. And where is home for her? So this is Peru, right? So this is Colombia, this is the Amazon. So she lives in this area that is called Alto Mishagua, where the Ucayali River passes through. So Rosanna returned to her house, and pretty much we didn't hear from her for months. And I want to be honest with you, it was really worrying. We were extremely worried because we said, what happened? Did something happen to her? Universities, schools were digitalizing, so we're having these online platforms, and she was not connected. So one day she messaged us back, and she said, well, I don't have electricity. I can really, connect to classes. Although I live in this amazing place, right? I will have to travel to the nearby city to get internet or even electricity to communicate. So as organization, as part of, we're part of this youth organization that we talk about energy transition. We do research about energy transition in our, university. We feel like we need to do something, and we need to do something specific, right? Especially in the Amazon, that we feel and we see, and you guys said it at the beginning of this call, we can see all these effects on climate. So besides, these effects on climate change, like it changes kind of in the rainfall, also the droughts, they experience, because the rivers, they also don't look the same all year around, which difficults as well communication in the river and difficults transportation. There is also the fires, as you have mentioned. But this has a human dimension in the way that, imagine a community that, for example, unfortunately sets fire, and they can connect, or they can message, or they can inform to get help, right? So this is kind of a main aspect, of even having access to energy and communication, is to be able to survive emergencies. And those emergencies, unfortunately, are being more frequent in the Amazon, as you all know. This is an image of the port where Rosanna's community, where she lives in. So for you to have an idea, do you remember that picture of the river? From the city that used to have like electricity, and Rosanna's community used to take 10 hours, 10 hours by boat. So if something happens, if she needed to send a homework, if she needed to have any access to internet, she needed to travel 20 hours in total to do it. So migration started also affecting her community. So a lot of youth have to migrate to other places to have, access to electricity. But I show you kind of the issues. And then what we started doing is that the community actually, they organize themselves and they said, and they reached to us. And they say, okay, you are guys studying engineering, you have tools, you know languages, you have access to internet. Can you help us to get a solar system installed in our community? And we absolutely did it. And I know it looks like magic, but it took 5 years for us to look for funding, for us to do all the sizing. But the community themselves, they were preparing as well. They were organizing. They were as well studying on how to do this. So we managed via distance, by online, to indicate them, to support them, in the basics of solar photovoltaics. And we did a trial. In the trial, we installed this solar panel and a small kind of tools house by Rosanna's leadership, and we managed to connect internet, to the community. So what happened next is that they created a school, the first school in the community. So kids were studying mainly during pandemics at a distance, right? So they because they didn't have a teacher before. So they were having these encounters, and people were learning, basic skills like reading to read and to write. And it sounds crazy, but we're talking about still adults that didn't have that opportunity, and especially young people that they might leave their community or they want to work in the future. So this was an important way to understand how energy justice impacts a community. So these pictures that I'm going to show you now in the next minutes are from July this year. We managed to organize a strategy so we can install a solar system per household. And this is a picture of the team. Pretty much we were carrying the solar panels, also the batteries from the nearby city. And we took our team and we trained the community. We're explaining to them and building actually with the youth on how to be solar technicians. So also we recognize them, and they had like a certificate, and they are also prepared to install other, solar panels in other communities in case they want to work as well with local partners. So I just want to show you a little bit of, oops, sorry, I keep doing this. I don't want to go to the end yet. So I want to show you a little bit of how it was. So the process of working, with other youth, with a community, it takes time, and we gotta understand that it's not just, for example, installing a project and just leaving it there, but building with the community, right? Building with their narrative of future, what energy transition means to them. Is it sustainable energy? Is it renewable energy? Is it having independence or having their youth also kind of leading the process? So this picture is a little bit important for us because it has a lot of youth, as you see, but also have a lot of perspectives of that youth they want to lead. And energy access can be, let's say, kind of a big entry point for them, not just to have the communication as we talk, or education, or even access to emergency service, but to have energy justice in their territories. And I just want to share a little bit about a story of Rosanna and what happened after. So when we managed to install the internet in her community, she managed to finalize uni, and she was connected online the day of her dissertation. And she presented about food security in other communities and how she's teaching other communities how to manage, like food security using traditional knowledge, in the way, for example, of cultivation, and not using monocultures, as you may said. There is a lot of soy production as well in the Amazon. So when she was presenting, I remember she had this image of kind of the forest, and the teachers were like, by the way, Rosanna, where are you? Like, you haven't been in person in the university for several years. And she said, I'm back at home. And then she said, you don't imagine how long it took for me to be able to connect and present. And we were watching her, we started crying because this is just one story, guys. This is just one person, right? And we would like to have more of this impact, especially in the Amazon, where we have the lowest level of electrification in Latin America. Although Latin America is not doing that bad, right, in terms of electrification, our region also is very unequal, and our region is suffering really the impacts of climate change daily in people's lives. So actually what I wanted to present here is not just necessarily just the problem, but what a group of friends managed to do, because that's what we are, a group of friends, and a little bit of showing the power of students, right? We see all this news. This is overwhelming. Sometimes we just been to this climate conference where Antonio Guterres, my former boss, was there, and he was giving a specific declaration of energy transition and youth action. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't see the results that we need in a diplomatic way. But I want to tell you something, we can wait, right? We also need to start at the students, at our community, even at our home, to do whatever we can. And I'm telling you that the power that we have, right? We are leading now the charge of climate justice, right? Because we have the perspective. We've been born into this crisis. So it is a little bit of motivation, but a little bit of challenge you not to just perhaps you feel that you cannot do much, you can do a lot. And also follow, climate stories on Instagrams. They have amazing material. If you want to volunteer, if you want to get involved, if you want to share videos and produce, be part of it. There is a lot of material in English as well, in German. And well, I think my time is over. I have a lot to say, but at least this gives you a kick of things that can happen. And if you want to reach me, even besides this session, if you want to ask questions now and even by email or social medias, feel free. So obrigada, gracias, or Yusulpai as well, how we say in Kisha, dankeschön. So I'm really open now the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for your inspiring stories and your insights from the Amazon rainforest. We had already quite a few questions coming in, but now is also your time to think of any open questions that you might have or any comments that you would like to give to us and to Joyce. But in the meantime, I would already like to start with the first question that we got. And this is, I would like to ask a little bit about what you think about indigenous people and indigenous communities, because I think we have a very limited view on indigenous people from Germany. And I would assume that like the communities that you were speaking about and where you're active, that we would frame them as indigenous people. And from our limited point of view, we only know that indigenous people are very, very important also for the protection of the Amazon rainforest. And I would like to hear your opinion about that. Do you also use the term indigenous people, or yeah, what does this term mean to you, and why, or do you think that it is actually true that indigenous communities are so important for the protection of the rainforest?
Amazing question. Thank you very much. I think, yes, the right term is indigenous communities, because they are native, right, of the region. But also, I think it is very fundamental what you mentioned, because if you see the leader of this project is Rosanna. She can't be here, unfortunately, because she doesn't speak English. So we also check materials in advance with her and everything. And also, obviously, she's traveling, a lot. So we're representatives, but also we've been building with them. Basically, what I can tell you from what I see is that, we talk about climate solutions sometimes in very technical terms, but, like if I mentioned at the beginning that indigenous peoples, they planted a huge part of the Amazon, and nowadays they carry the knowledge on how to not just preserve, but to grow in a very sustainable way. And myself, I've been several times to different Amazons, especially in Brazil, but we just came back from COP or the Peruvian Amazon. And I can see like the indigenous knowledge and technologies, or, they are not a thing from the past or from museums, but also is something that is alive in terms of, water management, food management, forest management, and even, about kind of other kind of ancient technologies, especially as I mentioned, there were city civilizations already organized. So they are very multicultural, the different, indigenous peoples. You cannot put everything in a box, but they do have the practical knowledge that we need at the moment, for many areas. So the contribution is amazing and is huge. They are actually recognized by the IPCC, which is this international report on climate change, and it has, even scientific, actually kind of convening of scientists all around the world. So it is already proven even by science that indigenous knowledge, it is a huge and fundamental tool for us to, mitigate climate change, but also to build, this perspective of climate justice, because climate justice traduces differently in different spaces, in different kind of geographies and different histories as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We will come back to climate justice later, probably if we have time. But I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the topic of indigenous communities. And I was wondering if you have a lot of conflicts with your local government or with other local people, and yeah, how you actually get along.
Well, this is unfortunately kind of one of the main points, and we talk a lot during this project, because we were saying where, and I didn't mention this during the presentation. So where, the region of the Peruvian Amazon, there is a huge project that is called Camisea, that is natural gas extraction. And there is a lot of, research even being developed on how the pollution of water and the air pollution of that gas and oil, we know about the oil exploitation, but also this gas exploitation has been happening, massively. And the crazy thing is that what Rosanna used to tell us is that their communities nearby, they are not even getting the royalties, right? Which is like the kind of a little bit of kind of revenue for this exploitation. So they are pretty much a resource that is being taken, and they are also being left, with environmental problems, also social problems, because these big projects, they displace people. And there is not necessarily like a consultation or like, oh, we're going to displace people and provide new land for them. There is not such this framework. So even, we have also the same situation, and it's very critical, even with hydroelectricity. Can be renewable, right, energy, but also as long as you displace people and manage, that impacts in that bad manner, it doesn't make a type of energy sustainable. So there is a lot conflict in the way of how local government sees, and that's something, unfortunately, that we are rewriting in Latin America, understanding that indigenous peoples are, from the forest, from far away, that they can be moved. This perspective is absolutely wrong, but also in the way that if you really want to do, a renewable energy and sustainable development, you need to think in all these different aspects. So yeah, we also, Rosanna, what she informed us is that several regions of the Amazon, the rivers are being polluted by mercury. This is a heavy metal. So when it gets in contact with human skin, it has a lot of issues. So what we also did, we took a couple of water filters so they can filter, heavy metals. And this is also a technology done by Brazilian students. So it is complicated a little bit. And I think if you check online, mercury pollution in Amazonian rivers, you're gonna find a lot. in Brazilian, Peruvian Amazon, but also about these conflicts. Even you saw it, I don't know, maybe last week, that even indigenous peoples, they did a huge protest inside of COP, because it's like, you're coming to our territory doing this climate conference, so at least recognize our land. So it is unfortunately a very conflictive area when energy projects in indigenous communities in Latin America.
I think we received a question that I think would fit quite well in here, because we talked about the community, we talked about, let's say, non-governmental organizations, and also what you guys set up. But one of the students was also interested in companies. If you have any experience where companies would contribute or collaborate with these other actors, or is it a sphere not yet very involved with such projects? Is it somehow even a competitor? I think it would be interesting to see what companies do or don't do in
So
this
my
context.
question back, what it means, like the, let's say, like the good impact of the private sector? Is it like that, or yeah?
Yes, so the exact question is, what could companies do to improve the situation
Yeah.
concerning climate justice? So I
Wow,
think,
oof, that's a very, very good question.
yeah.
Because we always don't touch, like private sector.
Mhm.
So I think that one, there are many areas, but the first one, obviously, it will be too important to understand the activity of the company, right? Even if it's on, let's say, technology or even energy, there is always ways. There is always way that, carbon impact can be reduced. And I'm not just talking about outsourcing this, like, oh, I'm not gonna reduce my carbon impact because I'm buying these carbon bonuses in other parts, and I'm outsourcing kind of my emissions. This cap and trade system is very complicated because you're not reducing per se the emissions, but also you're having these forests that they take ages as well to grow, and they don't absorb carbon from the beginning. It is always when they are a little bit older. So first of all, I'll say do not outsource your emissions. Second, there are ways that you can reduce as well your emissions, but also talking about people, I will say allow people as well to bring their perspectives, to have spaces, workshops, educational workshops about climate justice, about, like environmental racism as well. And I have seen in Brazil, especially during this year, a growth of a lot of think tanks where they are pretty much working with private sector to educate people in climate justice, to find solutions in a more human manner. And I also would like to say that employability is another topic. I talk in terms of Latin America, but I see also that happening a lot in Europe about the lack of, like these green jobs, how they call it, or sustainable jobs, so we understand it's a climate crisis, but it's a lot of competition for this kind of jobs. So there has to be also a transition, to offer enough jobs for youth, especially that they are leaving university or they are doing their internships. We also have a huge challenge, right, with AI. So a lot of, entry level, professions, even in climate and green jobs, they are, they even are being not replaced, but yeah, kind of replaced as well with certain AI technologies. So also understanding that if you want this transition to happen, you need to provide skills, but also to allow youth to be employed and to have a certain percentage, that goes for youth, that goes, let's say, for minorities, vulnerable people. And I think for schools, I think this space, like it is fundamental. I think that companies that they can understand the importance of having green skills, which are considered still like soft skills, for their employers, it is important. Otherwise, the industry is the one that pollutes the most, and the industry actually they are going to abide to, this big conference and this big result. So if they don't incorporate these practices, it's going to be really difficult to meet, the SDGs and the climate agreements.
Okay, thank you. So, as we are already speaking about corporate action against climate change, I was thinking you alluded once or twice to the COP. The COP is the Global Annual Climate Conference, which was taking place this year, or to be more precise, about 1 week ago in Belém in Brazil, which is also directly next to the Amazon rainforest. And Joyce, you've actually been there at the conference. And we have a Menti question for all of you. We would like to know what do you think? What are the main issues that are being debated at such a global climate conference? Let us know at Menti. And in the meantime, Joyce, I would like to ask you, what were your impressions at the climate conference? Did you enjoy it? Do you think it was a rather positive event, or was it kind of bad and negative? And did you have the impression that it was rather a bad and desperate mood?
I personally was very hectic because I think that, the always COPs are spaces that you want to meet a lot of people. And I'm not just talking about just politicians, but, like civil society and to meet in person. So what I always start saying is that, sometimes we see in the news, oh, the agreement is not ambitious enough. I think you have seen this. And then what is this ambitious? So you have 194 countries, right? You have one country, especially this year, that has really declared that they don't want to be part of the negotiations. They don't want to sign the Paris Agreement. Is one of the most polluted ones, the USA, right? But even though, besides this, you have 194 countries that they were there, they were participating, and decisions at COP are taken by consensus. So let me give you an example. Imagine you're in a room with 194 people trying to define one menu, the same that you're going to have all for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner, and you have, let's say, a target time of 1 or 2 hours. This is already challenging. And people is like, no, I rather this, I rather that, everybody's trying to get what is best and what fits them, beyond their capabilities and everything. The same are with negotiations. But in negotiations, you don't talk or negotiate one track, you negotiate several. So you have energy transition, you have forest protection, you have climate mitigation, climate adaptation, which is learn to live with climate effects, finance, and many others, many others. So now, if I tell you that these decisions are taken by consensus, now imagine the complexity of negotiation. So what we saw is that obviously Friday night, there was not a final test. So the governments were still working over the weekend. One big issue that we had is that big countries that have, for example, a lot of fossil fuel industries, they try to block negotiations in terms of putting the word, transitioning away from fossil fuels. We have this in previous COPs, but in this COP, there was a fear of putting the word fossil fuels. So in that aspect was a withdrawal, right, from other years, especially when you're having a COP in the Amazon, because Belém is the entry of one of the entries of the Amazon, and then you, in the other hand, you saw all a lot about civil society. So as I mentioned, the first day, indigenous peoples talk the blue zone, and they enter and they declare, okay, you're doing a COP in our territory, when you need, at least from the Brazilian government, recognize several of our territories, because that's other thing, Brazilian legislation don't necessarily recognize certain territories, although indigenous peoples been living there for centuries. So some territories got recognized after that. I can also tell you that there is a lot of alliances happening. There is a lot of projects like this one. We managed to talk to other partners to inspire. We managed to create a Latin American youth energy transition hub, for example, during the event. So those are the positive things, although the final test wasn't that ambitious enough, there is a lot of amazing, projects happening. Another, the good, the other side is that there was approved something that is the Belen action kind of roadmap. I mean, it has a couple of decisions in terms of climate adaptation, in terms of forest protection. So it's not that everything it was a failure, not necessarily that. They are very complex, but I want to say something, and this is something I mentioned in my presentation. We can wait. We can wait, you know, for the climate negotiations to be ambitious enough. I think we all have to mobilize ourselves in our territories, in our countries, in our family, because again, we're talking about a top bottom change. And this will take a lot, especially when we are in a critical decade. So I also think that the bottom-up approach is very fundamental. And especially with this project, when we were discussing at COP, we were also talking to our government and say, how come a group of 5 youth managed to electrify more families than a government in a year? And so this is powerful. So youth were not invited in the table just because we are youth, but because the change we're doing in our territories.
No, I think it's absolutely interesting how negotiations work in general. And we also received a question, which then would be our final question. We don't have much time to answer, so maybe you could get like the first thing that comes to mind when you think of how can students help and youth help in this process.
Yeah. I will say it. This one is gonna be a very short, way I'm gonna say it. And I don't know in chemistry if you know the word catalyst. A catalyst makes a reaction happen faster, right? I think we are catalyst of transformation. Youth, we are catalyst of transformation. We are very creative, we are very aware of what's happening. We have these spaces that previous generations didn't have. The opportunity of me being talking to you here and vice versa, as well, me learning from your questions and your perspectives. So we have this, communication without boundaries. And we also have not just, we have critical times, but I really think we have this specific kind of tool that we have in our minds, in our beings, to make transformation happen, not just faster, but also by the root, right? So I always said, when you, let's say you have a broken bone and you put a band-aid, that's not gonna cure it. I feel that band-aid, and I'm sorry, it's a personal opinion, is just the negotiations. I think the broken bone is a little bit about how our system is. If we just think that it's just going to be, a bunch of politicians deciding, I think we're just outsourcing our responsibility. So I think that is also questioning yourself. There is not a specific type of how being a climate activist. Anyone can be,
Okay.
a social
Thank
activist.
you very much, Joyce.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we need to finish the stream now. I would have loved to talk to you even longer and to gain more insights. Thank you so much, Joyce. Thank you so much to all of you for participating, for asking your good questions. And yeah, um, there are going to be a lot more program points, a lot more interesting lessons, keynotes, discussions, and workshops in this public climate school. So please check out the program for the public climate school. You can just easily find it when you type in public climate school in your browser. And of course, we also have learning material for this lesson. Um, yeah, so you can also check this out at the Public Climate School website, and then you can even dive deeper into the topic of climate justice and the Amazon rainforest and everything. Thank you so much for participating, Joyce, and to all of you, and have a great day. And hope you enjoyed our lesson of the Public Climate School.
Thank you. Gracias. Obrigada.
Thank you.